Ashita no Joe is the original boxing anime. This series is well over 50 years old and is known as being extremely influential to a handful of shows that we know and love, including, of course, the boxing anime Hajime no Ippo. This show has been recommended to me time and time again since I even started making Ippo videos, so let's get into the beginning of Ashita no Joe. Our first scene is just of our main character strolling. We cut to the morning of this city where people are just living their regular everyday life. We got the old heads talking they talk, the little kids running around, and we hone into a view of this old dude living inside this little construction pipe. He tries taking a swig of his bottle, but it's empty. He smashes it on the ground, telling one of them kids to bring him another one, but he just falls asleep right there on the spot, just crying. Whole time, our main character is just walking through as he suddenly turns, thinking that somebody was there, but it was nobody. He just continues on with his business, but turns right back around to see them same kids that we saw earlier. They're shocked seeing somebody walk through this city because they don't usually get much traffic, and they decide to put their little plan into action. Our main character, Joe, is just walking around as up from the roof, these little kids dump a garbage bin right on his head. But Joe dodges it, kicking it off to the side, making it hit another one of them kids, making it a little friendly fire situation. He tells them little kids that if they got something to say, then they can say it to his face. He got some free time today, so he don't mind. But of course, they're not doing anything. He just goes on about his day as we see OG from earlier getting kicked out of another bar. Joe pulls up, still minding his own business, doing his own thing, as OG grabs him by the foot, starting to beg him for some change. For anything, a couple dollars and he'll be good. But Joe just kicks his cane from underneath him, making him fall face first to the ground, telling OG, "Don't touch me." The kids off to the side can tell that something's going on. OG goes in for an attack, but Joe takes him down in one swift blow, telling him that if he's gonna pick a fight, at least do it when he's sober. But OG isn't giving up. He goes in for another attack, but Joe blocks him through both attempts as OG is actually pretty happy. He's like, "Hey kid, you got you a little good punch, don't you? How about this? Me and you, let's team up for some boxing." Obviously, this is out of nowhere. This drunk dude is all up in his face talking about some boxing right after he just tried to pick a fight, right after begging for some money. He just all over the place. OG is just hounding him like, "Come on bro, give it a try, you're gonna be great, you're gonna do great things." But naturally, Joe just walks off like anybody would do. I can't even blame him. Later on, as Joe is just walking, we see this little girl getting bullied by these grown ass men. They're lifting her up by her shirt, dragging her away from wherever she was just trying to sneak up into. Joe sees this and just walks off. He don't care about what this town got going on. It don't got nothing to do with him, so it's not his problem. But as he's trying to walk past them, they tell him to get out the road when they're trying to walk through. They're trying to press him out his little spot. But if it's anything about Joe, he's not gonna sit there and get punked. They're asking him if he got a death wish, but Joe doesn't even have nothing to say. He's ready to get straight to it. The girl manages to break away from their grip, telling them don't pick a fight with these guys. These are a bunch of bad guys from the Hajime group. But as he's trying to warn Joe, they snatch her up once again. They're just being overly aggressive. They're accusing her of trying to steal from one of their stores. It ain't really that serious. It's a little ass kid, but it only gets worse. They proceed to slap this little girl, claiming that she stole all the money from their cart, but she said she was just trying to get some food. That's all. But they slap her once again, throwing her to the ground. She starts crying and dude just walks up to Joe saying that they got to go through and bring this little girl to her parents to make sure she gets what she deserves. But still, Joe doesn't care. He tells them that if they in such a hurry, then they could just walk through the ditch, as Joe just straight up attacks this man, sending them crashing down as he starts whooping on everybody in the vicinity. He's putting in work, and up top the roof, we see OG just looking on. I don't know how his old ass got up there. He not even sober. Yeah, I know he ain't climbed no ladder, do none of that. But he's just sitting up there watching Joe go crazy. He's slamming people face into the ground. He's hitting people, sending them flying back. And all the spectators are genuinely amazed. But more specifically with OG, he starts going into a monologue saying that this is it. This is who he's been looking for. A punch like this has potential to take over the world. As Joe finishes packing all of them up, He just stands there as the kids run up saying how cool that was to witness. The little girl just walks up and Joe introduces himself as Joe Yabuki. He just tells her that next time she tries to steal some food, she might as well just steal the entire cart. The way he likes to think is go big or go home. If she gonna be a thief, she might as well commit to the full thing. She's mad at him calling her a thief and making fun of her. She says that that's no way to talk to a lady. He don't got no type of manners. And Joe actually apologizes, but proceeds to make fun of her once again as she went from mad to calm to right back to mad in the span of like 5 little seconds. Joe just continues to go on about his day as OG just says, Joe Yabuki, huh? He's the one I've been trying to find for all these years. Later that night, Joe's just strolling around the town as he sees all these different types of inns and bars, and OG is following close behind. Joe tries to sneak his way into this little inn and get a quick sleep in, but the owner says, nah, if you trying to sleep, then you gotta pay. Joe tries to talk his way out of it since he ain't got no money, but they kick him out and we see him at inn after inn getting kicked out for not having no bread. The entire time, OG has been following him and Joe just ends up laying on the side of the hill to sleep outside. But OG just pulls up on him saying that he's gonna get sick trying to sleep out here like this. It's not safe for him. He's trying to convince Joe to work with him in order to become a boxer, claiming that he could make him world class. He's not gonna have to struggle to find a place to sleep no more. He'll live a good life. Nice car, nice house, women all around him, all type of stuff. But Joe is straight ignoring this dude. He dozes off as he wakes up later, realizing that OG gave him his coat and bought a plate of food for him. While over with OG, he's sitting there around a fire, cold because he gave Joe his only jacket so he could stay warm. He's just talking with a few of his friends as they know how OG gets when it comes to boxing. When he's got boxing on his mind, he's like a whole new person. His boy just tells him to have a drink and warm up, and OG goes after it, but realizes that he's got to do better. He decides to quit drinking and turn his life around. He's going to dedicate everything on turning Joe into a world-class boxer. He knows that Joe is real stubborn right now, but he truly believes that he'll come around. Out the cut, OG sees Joe sitting up top this swing, looking on at him, saying that he's been looking everywhere for him. OG is genuinely hyped to see him as Joe tells him that he just wanted to find him and give him his dirty coat back. He warns OG that the next time he comes around him, things are gonna get ugly. Joe says he hates drunken bums, but OG's trying to explain that he's turned his life around. He's gonna stop drinking, all that. After seeing Joe's potential, he's gone cold turkey. Even though Joe was just being mad disrespectful, OG says that he's willing to put everything on the line for Joe, asking him if he understands. But Joe just calls OG by his government name, Danpei Tange. Joe says that he recalls a boxer who used to go by that name, though he wasn't very strong at all. OG just says that was a long time ago, but Joe cuts him off, saying that right now he's got some other business to handle. Walking up from behind are a bunch of men from the Onihime group. They're here to get revenge on Joe, but OG is trying to warn them to not get into it. Just like that little girl was saying from before, it's too dangerous. But as per usual, Joe isn't listening. They start having this all-out brawl, and being as strong as he is, Joe starts whipping on each and every one of them, and OG is just eating this up. He genuinely can't believe what he's seeing with his eyes. But in the middle of the fight, the head honcho of the little group calls it off, saying that playtime is over. They all pull out knives and OG realizes it's just getting serious. He drops to his hands and knees, begging the Onihime group not to do it. This kid just has too much potential. But Joe is just over here laughing at him. Even with knives in front of his face, he's not worried. He just tells OG that he looks pathetic. He runs up on Joe, telling him not to be so cocky. His life is seriously in danger. And the head honcho agrees that they have every intention of killing Joe. But Joe responds, that's exactly how it should be. He's ready to go into this life or death battle, but at this point, OG has had enough of Joe and his ignorance. He starts putting their hands on him, knocking him straight to the ground, telling the rest of the gang members that if they want to lay another finger on Joe, it's gonna have to be over his dead body. They all start beating on OG as Joe wakes up trying to get him to move, but he pins him to the ground, telling Joe that he will become a boxer. He is gonna team up with them and they're gonna do great things together. OG just tells him that you are my tomorrow. You are tomorrow's Joe. As Joe just screams out to be freed. The next thing that we see is Namitabashi Police Station, where Joe is being brought out for some questions. Joe's sitting here playing the victim role, saying that he was jumped and attacked by all these gang members, which is technically true, but the police officer says he sent 15 of them to the hospital. He can't get out scotch-free. The officer yells at him, saying that he should be thankful to OG for saving him, but Joe says if he wasn't there, then Joe would have really had the opportunity to show him how strong he is. The officer just tells him that OG was hospitalized and is bedridden because of Joe. And on top of that, he's the only reason that Joe is even going to be able to walk out of here. He stepped up to be Joe's legal guardian. I don't know why I thought he was older than he actually was, but Joe, starting out the series, according to Google, is 15 years old. Joe is upset at the thought of it, but at the end of the day, he's able to get out. And leaving the police station, he runs into Saichi, the little girl from earlier. He tells her to lead him to the rest of the kids in her little friend group, and as they both make it there, Joe announces to all of them that he's got good news. He's decided to make them his loyal followers. They'll have to listen to and follow everything he says. They're not so sure about it, but Joe is practically threatening them to comply. And he tells them that their first order of business is already on the table. We get a view of the Onihime group as the boss is talking to one of his men when from the door, Joe gets brought in. Everybody instantly pulls up, ready for smoke, but Joe says he's not here for a fight. He recognizes that he must be talking to the big dog as he tells him that his old man, OG, is hospitalized because of the little scheme the other day. He's just here to collect some fees to pay that off. They're obviously not going because Joe's the one who started it, but the leader of the Onihime group just asks him how much. He says he was going to ask for $1 million, but since it's their first time meeting, he's going to give him a little discount and only going to ask for $300,000. But dude isn't budging. He says that the most he'll do is 30. With a stipulation on top of that. Joe's gonna have to work for him from now on, and that $30,000 will be considered as his little hiring fee. Joe is obviously not going, but dude isn't here to negotiate anymore. He tells everybody to get rid of this man. But real quickly, Joe just runs to the window, telling them all to take a look outside. They see all of these kids scattering around, ready to alert all types of authorities about what's really going on in this building. The second that Joe drops his handkerchief, that's his signal to them to let everybody know. And in an instant, this building is going to be flooded with police. The boss just tells his men to give Joe the $30,000. But as soon as they do, this man drops the handkerchief anyways, and the kids call the cops and the fire station and all types of people to the Onihime group's building, and they realize they just got played. Joe makes his way back to OG, who's still resting up at home, as he tells him that he haggled his way to get the Onihime group to give him $30K to help with the damages. OG's happy that Joe is finally coming around and showing his true kindness. He was sure that Joe had it within him all this time, but Joe pulls out another sheet of paper, this invoice that OG has to pay for his negotiation fee, his mental stress fee, his hired employees fee, all types of stuff, taking 20 out of the 30,000 that he just gave him. OG realizes brothers did all this for some money, calling Joe a scumbag, but Joe actually agrees. He says that he is a scumbag, so OG better not show his face around him anymore. Them two just aren't compatible. But OG's not gonna give up so easily. He explains that now he's Joe's legal guardian. He's expected to watch over Joe at all times, and he's planning on using that to his advantage. He's dead set on turning Joe into a boxer. Joe's just like, fine, do whatever you want. The next scene that we get is of Joe using the kids once again for one of his little schemes. He has one of them hiding within his coat, cheating this little pachinko machine that they're at, this little pinball machine, as they're just racking up all these rewards. Of course, this is a business ran by the Onihime group, and as they're all leaving, Joe is saying that it's the Tange family, it's the Tange family. This is OG's last name. He's planning on pinning it all on him since he's so intent on being Joe's guardian. The very next thing that we see is OG getting pulled up on by, well, I'm assuming is some type of social worker or something, saying that he's just using Joe to conduct his little criminal activities. He says that's the only reason that OG must have offered to be his guardian in the first place. But OG is standing up for himself, saying that he will turn Joe around. And he promises that. Over with Joe, he ended up using all of that money that he stole earlier to get these miscellaneous items for real cheap and sell them out in the street. By doing this, they're taking customers away from another one of the Onihime group's businesses, and at this point, they're completely fed up with it. They run up on Joe, ready to settle things for good, but Joe just says he's been waiting on them. Out the back, the little kids pull up, throwing these groceries in their face as Joe follows, finishing the job. OG is just looking on, telling Joe not to do it, but of course, Joe isn't listening. Finally, Onihime reinforcements pull up, and with this many people pulling up on him, Joe decides to continue this fight another day. They all try and run after him. They're not planning on just letting him get away like that, but OG steps in to buy Joe some time. He's already in a crutch, he's already got these bandages everywhere, but he continues to take a beating so that Joe doesn't injure his body. He just gets hit to the ground, saying that Joe will box for him, and when he does, it'll be great. OG wakes up to seeing Joe by his side. He's hyped to see him, but just his excitement is re-aggravating all of these injuries. Joe just asks why he doesn't give up already. Joe already told him that he's not interested in boxing. The only way that he'd ever start boxing would be for some money. OG just asks him to listen to his story, but Joe is still not interested. He's not trying to hear some washed up boxer relive his glory days, literally laughing at OG's face, knowing that this means a lot to him. But OG still goes into this flashback, not of his glory days, but he talks about his career after leaving the ring. He had to retire because of an eye injury, but still desperately hung on to boxing as a coach. But we get to see that the fighters that he trained just didn't have it in them. They didn't have that same passion for boxing like OG did, and he couldn't stand it. He's over here getting into arguments with his boxer, literal physical altercations with them, and in the end, dude just ends up leaving for a bigger and better gym. Ever since that specific boxer left him, OG was never able to get back into the ring. His own boxing career had ended just short of winning his title match, so his goal was to create a champion boxer of his own. But after that boxer left him, he fell into debt and his life just spiraled downwards. OG calls himself a loser. He never got married, he never had children, he never found the success that he truly wanted in his passion, and was never able to find that disciple that he was looking for. He began to drink, but ironically, the more he drank, the more he thought about boxing, which just made him want to drink even more in order to forget about it. This pattern just repeated itself year after year until he ran into Joe. But back to real time, Joe isn't even paying attention. OG is just begging for him to listen, but Joe just runs out to see the Onihime group right outside the door. They get into this altercation as OG is just trying his best to crawl and make his way out there to stop him. But of course, Joe is straight ignoring this man. He ends up going on the run from the Onihime group, but eventually he gets caught. OG is still crawling his way down there as the kids end up running into him and they lift him up, starting to carry him there. OG's just thinking to himself that Joe has to stay safe. He's gotta be careful. Again, Joe is his tomorrow. As they make it to the scene, they just see all of these Onihime group members laid out all over the place, but Joe is nowhere to be found. OG is panicking, running all over the place, even finding the head of the Onihime group, but he admits that the Onihime group was no match for Joe. Finally, they're posted up against the wall. He sees them all beaten up and bruised. OG just walks up, grabbing Joe, wanting to punch him in the face, but he just starts crying, grateful that Joe wasn't seriously hurt. He just falls to the ground, laughing and crying at the same time, as Joe finally decides to cut OG a deal. 3 meals and 500 yen every single day. Those are his conditions in order to start boxing. OG can't believe it, but Joe says it's true. He grabs his hand, crying that Joe finally understood his feelings. He's gonna make him the #1 boxer in the world, no doubt. Fast forward and we see OG putting Joe straight to work. He's out here with the punching bag doing these sets as the kids pull up calling out to Joe, and he's glad to see that they finally made it. But OG is not letting him get distracted. He interrupts the session, telling Joe that he's got to stop punching with only his arms. He's strong, but the real strength comes from when you put your hips into it. He has Joe hold the bag and shows him how it's done, but when they switch positions, Joe was just trolling at first, trying to make the kids laugh. He's just messing around. But once he locks in, punching from his hips, he goes straight through the sandbag, destroying it. So Unk has him move on to mid punching. They're going on and on, but Joe gets a little too carried away, punching OG, putting my mans to sleep. I don't know if this is an accident or not. I can't really tell with this dude Joe, but hours later, OG finally wakes up as now it's time to head to work. The kids are surprised that he's out here working, As long as they've been alive, he's been out in the streets, being drunk all the time, never going to work. But once he gets into boxing, he takes his life real seriously. OG gives him the 500 yen for his daily fee, telling Joe that he still got his homework. While OG's at work, Joe's gotta run between here and the gas tank. He's gotta jump rope 3,000 times, but Joe cuts him off, telling him that he already knows what he's gotta do. They send him off to work as Joe stashes his cash away inside of this little crack in the wall, and the kids are trying to figure out what he's planning on doing with the money he's making. Joe reveals that he has a plan, but he says he can't tell him exactly what it is right now, but it's gonna be real nice. We get a view of OG at work, and he's just thinking about Joe, realizing that he's finally found his perfect boxer. Joe was born to do this, but right now, he's way too rough around the edges. He's gonna need strict practice in order to make him into a real deal boxer. But once he gets in the ring, he's gonna be great. As far as on his end, OG's gonna work hard in order to build Joe a great gym to grow in. He's thinking about what Joe's probably doing right now, running to the gas tank and back, and after that, he'll do his jump rope and then his sit-ups and his weaving practice. Just the thought of Joe training is getting OG hype and it's pushing him to keep working hard. But over with Joe, he's out here messing around. He's doing this performance, collecting money from these little kids' allowances, and fast forward to the next day, we see this whole routine begin to repeat. OG heads out to work, giving Joe his little 500 yen, as Joe heads out to try and hustle some more money. When he runs into two of the little kids, he's shocked to see that they have this nice red balloon and all these snacks with them. He's trying to figure out where they stole it from, but they claim they didn't steal it at all. They got it from this nice lady named Shiraki Yoko. Every month, Shiraki comes around, giving them all types of presents and gifts, but Joe instantly doubts her, telling the kids that they're way too naive. He says people are only nice to you when they want something out of you. And as he heads around the corner to see this Shiraki lady, Joe is immediately shocked by her appearance. But he puts on this front that she ain't really all that. There are these photographers around her taking pictures of her handing out candy and gifts to all of these little kids, and we can see that this really is a PR stunt. Seemingly, she's only giving out these gifts for the image of it. Joe is pissed off, telling the little kids that they're done taking gifts from her, and if they continue to, then Joe's not gonna associate with them no longer. The kids are like, chill, big bruh. We only taking it because she's giving it out. It'd be rude to decline. And just hearing this, Joe gets an idea. He's like, you know what? Maybe you're right. If Shiraki loves to give out to the poor, then why not receive a couple gifts? Before we get to see what Joe's scheme is, we go back to seeing OG working hard. He's going crazy, and his coworkers have all heard from him about Joe and how excited OG is about him. But they're saying if he don't chill working this hard, he's gonna work himself to death. But OG says he never die without seeing Joe blossom into his full potential. He's just walking home after work as he doesn't see Joe out here training like he's supposed to be. He just steps out saying that when he gets back, he's gonna make him jump rope twice as much as before. This is unacceptable. But as he smacks the side of the house, that panel that was holding all of Joe's money breaks, and OG has no idea where all this came from. Obviously, it has to be Joe's, but he's worried about what he did to get it. At the worst time possible, the police shows up. As OG was just thinking about what terrible things Joe might have done for this money, he just starts to apologize and beg for forgiveness, but the police officer has no clue what he's talking about. He just came here to warn OG that Joe is planning on doing something bad. He's been walking around town, gathering up all these kids, having them follow him around, but they don't know what Joe's gonna do. Although, based on his track record, it can't be nothing good. If Joe does end up doing something bad again, then they'll have to take some serious action. As the police officer leaves, OG's starting to get mad at Joe, but then refrains his mind of thinking, saying that Joe wouldn't do anything so bad. He's probably saving up all of his money and is going out there to earn some more in order to build up a boxing gym for the both of them to work out of. Joe would never betray him. But as we see Joe, he's in this fancy house alongside the gang. Of course, the house that they're in is Shiraki's, and as she comes in, introducing herself, she asks what they need help with. Joe gets up, talking real formally and sincerely, saying that they're all in grave need of her help. He claims that all of these kids were rescued from an orphanage that was ran by this philanthropist, but the owner tragically died. Joe had personally rescued all of them, taking care of them financially, but he doesn't even have too much money to himself. Shiraki just says if it's money that you need, then she'll have it taken care of by tomorrow. She calls up the newspaper, having them come and hold this little press conference as the reporters get there, and they're both reiterating the story that Joe had just told her. But now, Joe is adding more and more onto it. He's claiming that he didn't want to bring it up because it was so sensitive, but the director of that orphanage was his mother. The press is eating all of this up as they gather all of them together for a picture. Side note, the kids had no clue what Joe was even talking about. They didn't know that they came here to be a part of his little scheme, but they can't really back out of it now. Over with OG, we see that he's working at another job in order to stack up as much money as he can. He's practically eating scraps, trying to keep down on his expenses, as he's just imagining Joe in the ring taking wins, and that's what's pushing him on. His coworkers notice that OG's barely eating, so they pull up on him, giving him a plate of food, saying that he's gotta eat. They sit down and eat together as they talk about the building that they're working on. This top level that they're at right now is supposed to be this real nice sky-high restaurant, and OG says once it's finished, he'll treat them to a meal here. They both know that it's gonna be dumb expensive to eat here, but OG says once Joe becomes champion, money won't be a problem. But as dude opens the newspaper, OG sees Joe on the front of it. That same picture that he took with the kids and Shiraki, as he reads on this entire story that Joe had made up. OG is livid. He can't believe that Joe is taking advantage of him like this. While over with Joe, we see him with all of this cash, just laughing at his planned success. The next thing that we see is Shiraki being told that the entire article ended up being a lie. These news reporters came to Shiraki saying that Joe guy turned out to be quite the delinquent. He lied about his mother being the orphanage director, and those kids that he brought in weren't even orphans in the first place. The reporters made the mistake of blindly trusting Shiraki because he's had a good track record in the past, but now their bosses are upset because this damages their company's reputation. Shiraki steps up saying that she'll take full responsibility. She's gonna get her hands on Joe and have him give a public apology. Over with Joe, he's telling the kids not to trip. It doesn't matter that they lied for the money, because regardless of if they're orphans or not, they're still poor, so they needed it. But Joe says he's not done. His next goal is to get 100 million. He takes them to this little abandoned building that he's working out of, showing them his stash of money. He busts the window open, explaining to the kids that right here in the middle of the slums, he's gonna build all types of buildings. Apartment complexes, amusement parks, hospitals, factories, everything. As he calls out his little plan, Joe's Paradise. As the kids say they're in for it, Joe says that officially they all work for him now, so he can't have them looking all funky. Their next mission is to go have suits made. Back with OG, he's running home trying to figure out where Joe is, still in shock that he took advantage of him, and comes to the realization that Joe hadn't been training at all. All of this hard work and dedication that OG was putting in order to match Joe was all for nothing. He throws his hat at the little punching bag that he made, telling Joe that he will find him, but he can't even stay mad for long. He really just hopes that Joe stays out of trouble. Over at the suit shop, Joe was getting into it with the man behind the counter because he won't allow them to get suits made. This shop runs by this little system that you have to be referred by an existing customer before you can be served, but Joe isn't trying to hear all that. He's like, oh, y'all not trying to serve us because we look poor, ain't it? But the man behind the counter is trying to reason with them and explain why the system is how it is. But out the back, Shiraki walks in and Joe's like, perfect. I know a referral from her will be as good as any. Pretty much demanding Shiraki to introduce them to the man so they could get these fancy suits made. But Shiraki walks up, smacking Joe across the face, demanding that he get on his hands and knees to apologize right now. She says that she'll forgive him this one time, but lying like that is unacceptable. But Joe is not backing down. He just calls her an idiot for falling for it. He's not going to apologize for nothing. Shiraki just gives him one final chance, saying that if he apologizes, she won't go to the police. And hearing this, the kids are like, Joe, you might want to just apologize, bro. It ain't that serious. But Joe still doesn't care. He'll never apologize to somebody like her. The reason that Joe doesn't like her in the first place is because her image is as this goddess who comes down and blesses the poor with these nice things. He don't like how she's perceived and how she carries herself, almost as if she's better than everybody else just because she got a little money. But from the way that she acts and the way that she moves, at least from the outside viewer's point of view, it doesn't seem as if she thinks about herself that way. She does do things for the press, and I thought that when she called in the reporters to announce the story about Joe and these orphans and whoop, that she was only doing it for the press, but they ended up getting these donations from people all across Japan. So if anything, she was just bringing his cause, which she thought was honest and noble, to be in front of more eyes and to get more donations and to support them even more. I don't know Shiraki's true intentions or her motives behind her actions, but Joe is set on her being the bad guy. Joe just sits there daring her to call the police. He's not gonna get caught anyway. Shiraki storms off and the kids are worried about Joe getting taken to jail, but Joe says, loud enough so she could hear it, she's not gonna call the police. She just be broadcasting to the world how stupid she is for falling for his trap. And people like her are much more worried about their image than anything else. Before Shiraki makes it out the door, she just looks at Joe, calling him a piece of trash, as he grabs this little spool of thread, throwing it through the window. But Shiraki just gets into her car as she tells the driver to take her to the police station immediately. I feel like Joe's way of looking at her isn't fully unjustified, but I know that her calling him a piece of trash, almost personally reaffirming that she's better than he is as a person in terms of everything, really says something off in Joe's brain. That was just, I don't know, that was crazy. But not too long later, we get a view of OG getting stopped by the police as Joe has been taken to jail for fraud. They make it to the station, but they're all shocked to see that every officer here is laid out on the ground and Joe has escaped. The officer just tells OG that Joe's gonna have to be taken to a juvenile detention center for at least 6 months. He can't believe it, but from the back, they hear over the walkie-talkies that Joe had barricaded himself inside of this building. They instantly rush to the scene as Joe is holed up in his little office, and we can even see the parents of the gang upset that Joe has wrapped their children into this. As OG walks up, he's forced to take the blame from all of these parents because he is Joe's guardian. All of this anger is directed at him. They're saying that if their kid gets hurt, he's gonna have hell to pay. The police all line up and are told to have their weapons ready. He may be young, but he packs a punch. They're gonna have to force him out of this building. But before they start to head inside, OG rushes in through a hole at the bottom, telling the police chief that he'll bring Joe back. He doesn't want to escalate this situation any further. OG walks up to the window as Joe starts going off on him about OG trying to control him, and now he's trying to turn him into the police. He's not going to succumb to OG's pressure. But OG says that if Joe thinks that he can't control him, then he's way in over his head and he's gotten too cocky. Joe launches a rock directly at my man's skull, causing him to fall and start bleeding. And this is where he really gets mad. He rushes upstairs, bursting through this barricade, beginning to square up with them. Now it's time to get serious, but Joe easily knocks him right back down the stairs in one little punch. OG gets back up, starting to put the hands on Joe, knocking him over the table, telling him that he's just getting started. Joe gets back to his feet, admitting that OG's got some decent little moves. They get into this fight as it's just super scrappy, but OG's weight, strength, and experience is starting to overpower him. The kids try and help Joe out, but OG says don't they dare. Joe's gotta be sent to jail so he can reform and come back with his head on straight. Joe just says he'd rather die than go to jail, but OG punches him one final time, smashing his face against the wall as finally he falls to the ground. OG just looks on as he carries Joe back outside and he's finally taken away. As they drive off, OG just cries, hoping that Joe comes back. Joe is his tomorrow.